Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu in mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Iesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Brethren in Christ, laudate Jesus Christus.
In secula.
This is Timothy Flanders with the Meaning of Catholic. Jesus is King. Welcome to another edition of the Terror of Demons morning show with co-host Kennedy Hall. How you doing, brother?
Living the dream for real now.
Living the dream for real now. Yeah, we're gonna get into that dream. The Canadian Uprising sweeping the Canadian provinces and the world. Coming up in just a few minutes. First, we want to say welcome to the 4th week after Epiphany. There's only 2 more weeks until Septuagesima. I can hardly believe it. But here's the Liturgy of the Home calendar. Once again, liturgyofthehome.com. The next calendar is coming out for Septuagesima. So we've got the Calm into the Storm. St. John Bosco is today. St. Ignatius, great martyr of the church, the early church, on Tuesday. And then Candlemas, the official end of the Christmas season, happens this Wednesday. Mm-hmm. And then we also have a leader, St. Andrew Corsini and St. Agatha. So we got a wonderful week ahead of us. Thank God we are Catholic. It's a wonderful time to be Catholic. It's a wonderful time to work out your spiritual life. So Lent is coming. This is the joy of the cross. And we're going to talk about the exciting news in just a minute. This week, we also have, in February, we're having a little bit of a Pope Benedict Appreciation Month. We're having the greatness of Joseph Ratzinger on Tuesday with Richard Decloux. We're having him on again as a patron-only show, talking about the subject of You Know What with Richard Decloux and Joseph Ratzinger. There was some controversy regarding You Know What, Pope Benedict, recently over the past few years. We'll talk about that. We're also going to be discussing some further controversy with Pope Benedict with Ed Mazza later on this month. Hopefully we'll have Joseph Pierce on as well soon. Joseph Pierce has a new book on Pope Benedict, Defender of the Faith. And then we're also covering the other aspect of You Know What. Patrons, you know what I'm talking about. We've got a 12-part series right now. It's currently 12 parts long. And we're having Paleocrat to talk about the subject that you all want to talk about, which is written by E. Michael Jones on the subject of on the subject of You Know What. And that's going to be happening this Thursday. So that'll be this Thursday. That's what's coming up on Meaning of Catholic. Also, rumor has it that Paleocrat Diaries may be dropping soon as well, along with his book. So, Kennedy, what's going on with you? Anything new besides what we'll talk about in a few minutes?
Professionally, just same old writing. I'm going to be narrating an audiobook. Stay tuned. Not one of mine, but so I'm learning how to use Audacity. I've got to learn how to use the software really well. And so that's been interesting. I've been practicing with things, and I think I got it down to try to make it sound professional. The breath sounds and all that kind of stuff. It's actually it's not that complicated, but it's something. I was debating whether I should hire somebody or something. I said, these 19-year-old kids will make these like #1 hit songs with GarageBand and a Mac in their closet. I can figure out how to do an audiobook as a 33-year-old man who can read. So anyway, that's what I've been trying to figure out. And lots going on at LifeSite this week. I mean, this whole trucker thing that we'll talk about, it's a thing. It's a big deal, and it's a lot going on with it. So I might have to go to Ottawa soon. I think I'm the only Canadian correspondent for LifeSite who lives in Ontario, I think.
Oh, really?
So I think I might have to go up anyway. I'm not sure, but we'll see.
Okay, great. Excellent.
Yeah.
So, and once again, the Terror of Demons reprint is available now from TAN. There it is right there. So pick that up. It's a great Lenten book for men. Mm-hmm. Pick it up. Men, time to take care of business. Mm-hmm. Lent is upon us very soon. If you're not in gear to fight against the Marxists, get yourself in gear internally. in your spiritual life, most importantly, because if you start fighting against the Marxists and you're not in the state of grace, you're struggling with serious sins, don't do it. Don't get on the internet, try to do something. You need to take care of yourself first, and then you can take care of your wife and children, and then you can take care of the Marxists. We need you in this fight, but not as a weak link. So take care of yourself, take care of business. So let's talk about the Canadian Uprising. So for viewers who are not familiar, if you're not familiar with what's going on, can you give us kind of like, how did this all begin? Can you tell us about that? What are the origins of this?
Well, the actual trucker movement itself came up pretty quickly. It's seemingly out of nowhere. But it's more complicated than that. The last 2 years, the spread here have been difficult. It's been something like a war of attrition between hope and despair. It really has been a strange thing. And there has been a contingency of, because people have to understand, there has not been a single moment, except for in a couple provinces, where the measures have been dropped. We've had a mask mandate here in Ontario, which I've ignored the whole time. But we've had a mask mandate since August of 2020, I think. It became provincial in October. Like there was a couple counties that still didn't have one, and but virtually everyone's had it since August. And of course, it made the virus go away because it was magical. There's not been a single time here in Ontario or Quebec, and those are the two largest provinces population-wise. They comprise half the country's population, or maybe a little more. There hasn't been a time where churches have not had some sort of restriction. Thankfully, good priests and things have ignored a lot of them. There hasn't been a time where restaurants have had no restrictions. There hasn't been a time where anything actually normal has happened. Alberta had 3 months of normality. Saskatchewan did. They kind of dropped their stuff for summer, said they were going to do it forever, and then flip-flopped and whatever. Vaccine passports have come in. There isn't a single province in the country where there's not some sort of vaccine passport system at all. The most free of places is Alberta, where you can present a negative test, which is valid for like 48 hours if you don't want to present a passport or something like that. It's rough. So this whole time, there's been this stupid term that I can't stand anymore, the idea of frontline workers and essential workers. I can't even stand the word essential anymore. You guys use the same term down there? Like, I guess because you call them frontline doctors, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's pushed as much in the media. I don't really follow the mainstream media at all, so I don't really know what they're pushing. But in terms of, there was a little bit of that here and there, though.
So there's this cult of verbiage here, everything frontline workers and essential workers, and it's just been so. I mean, at the beginning of this whole thing, when we were all gonna die, right, as the narrative went, the frontline workers were truck drivers, hospital workers, bus drivers, basically people that you just couldn't shut the thing down. Even the Marxists didn't want to do it. So you can find tweets. There was a tweet of Justin Trudeau in 2020, like March, talking about how great truckers are and stuff like that. So, as with everything that's progressed, the government has done a really good job of everything that they do, and they've stopped the virus in its track, and it's gone away. And one of the things that they're doing to make sure that they continue that is they've implemented a vaccine mandate for truckers traveling across the Canadian-American border. Now, America has its own mandate. That's a whole other thing. But this is specifically about the Canadian one. So technically right now, if you're not vaccinated, but you're a trucker, if you enter back into the country, you have to isolate for 10 days or 14 days, which makes your job impossible. So effectively, they're saying it's not a mandate. You don't have to be. You just have to isolate when you get back, which makes your job impossible.
And just for clarification, how are these truckers employed? These are all like private companies in Canada, or is there any like
mix? Oh, there's no public
contracted
trucker. Yeah, there's no like government owned trucker company.
Okay, so this is all private companies. The government of Ottawa is imposing on the entire Canadian.
It's a federally regulated industry. So it's the same with airlines. Right now in Canada, you can't get on a plane unless you have a vaccine passport. Except WestJet Airlines, one of our sort of major domestic airlines. The law says that you have to have a vaccine passport, but the private airlines themselves are allowed to accept religious exemptions if they want. Apparently, WestJet is being like the nicest of them all. They laid off their employees who weren't vaccinated, but apparently they are allowing. I know like a bunch of Catholics who flew back and forth over Christmas and they weren't vaccinated, and apparently WestJet is allowing religious exemptions, which is nice, but most aren't. Anyway, so it's a disaster. I mean, it's a very oppressive reality, and so truckers, the truck driving industries, they have, they're pretty united on various things. They decided to do a convoy. So the estimates are all over the place, between 5,000 and 100,000 trucks. It's probably around 10,000 trucks or so. Actually, long haul trucks made their way to Ottawa. However, there were convoys all over the country. So basically what's happened is they've parked themselves in front of Parliament. And there was estimates between 30 and 100,000 people were there on Saturday and Sunday. And at the moment, they've raised about $9 million more. The actual organizers of the trucking convoy said that they have enough money to stay there for 8 years. Like, it's just absurd, but it's just, we don't have to go anywhere. Elon Musk is on board now. He's like helping them raise money and retweeting their stuff, which Elon Musk gets in trouble from the feds for tweeting about money because he ends up shorting and manipulating the stock market. He has such a big following when he just talks about Bitcoin or something. And so he's doing the same thing.
So I understand that they raised a GoFundMe, these truckers. So they've got all this money from this GoFundMe, even though that was attacked by the media. So these are all, so they've basically quit their jobs at this point.
So a lot of truckers are independent owner operators, and they can
their own business, basically.
Yeah. Your truck is like a house. You own it. It's like a mortgage. It's your business.
So then they contract with companies to truck. And
also, though, truckers are conservative. Okay, here's the thing about trucking. This is why I've had to write a bunch of articles about this. So I've thought about and I know I have friends who work in trucking. One of my closest friends actually works in trucking, and trucking is one of the most regulated industries. All political theory aside, whatever the benefits are of regulations, which ones you think there should be. The point is, it's very regulated. You have everything's logged, everything. It's an extremely meticulous endeavor. Obviously, lots of health and safety, all these sorts of things. And truckers know what it's like to deal with the government as much as anybody. You can't. I don't know if there's a more regulated industry as far as all the things you have to cross off. Trucking companies have, entire positions where someone's job is literally just to basically deal with insurance companies and the government all the time, all day for, everything. And it's really, really heavily regulated. So truckers are generally conservative people. It's a very down to earth job. You don't get in there because you have a degree in lesbian dance theory or something like that. This is a hardworking, long days. You're dealing with agricultural for the most part. You're dealing with manufacturing for the most part. You're dealing with construction for the most part. Those are they're delivering the supplies, especially in the long hauls. You're just dealing with people who, generally speaking, are pretty conservative. Yeah, anyway, that's from Parliament Hill on the weekend. And so truckers listen to like 8 to 10 hours of podcasts a day, like when they're on the road. They've been listening to, they're conservative people who have been listening to right-wing true information for the last 2 years. And they know what they're talking about. They know their risks. They know their things. So about 80% of the trucking industry is vaccinated. The last 20% doesn't want to get vaccinated. It doesn't mean that 20% of the truckers are the ones across the border, but they're very united with each other. And they just decided enough is enough. So they decided to make a convoy to Ottawa. And to be honest, it's one of the most effective things I've seen in a long time. This is the most insane thing I've seen in my life in Canada. It's funny about what's going on right now is there have been bigger protests than this. There's actually been a couple marches in Ottawa or in Quebec since this whole thing has started. This like the 2 weeks until the spread. There have actually been a couple marches in Quebec where I think they had like 80 to 100,000 people. They were massive. They were like those marches through the streets of Paris and things like that you see there. But this isn't the biggest demonstration that there has been in the country in one place in the last 2 years. But the thing that's been crazy about it is I had to go report on it at a truck stop in the city of London, Ontario. And every single overpass on every single highway in the country, I kid you not, has 500 to 1,000 people on it, supporting people. Yesterday in Regina, Saskatchewan, the province of Saskatchewan is like 4 times the size of North Dakota, or 3 times the size of North Dakota, only has 1 million people. And they had thousands of people and hundreds of trucks down at their capital. Edmonton was the same thing. Calgary was the same thing. There were protests literally everywhere. And there's something strange right now where the international media has actually caught on to this. And I've never seen anything like this. It's, we've been in this pressure cooker for the last 2 years, I think. And this was this movement, this protest thing. It was like the last straw. It was, okay, a lot of people think that you should get vaccinated and be a healthcare worker. A lot of people believe that. Okay, that's fine. Fair enough. We can debate that. A lot of people think that you should get vaccinated to be a education worker, let's say. A lot of people think you should get vaccinated to be in a nursing home. I disagree with the logic of it, but nonetheless, let's just take them at face value and say you work in a quote unquote vulnerable setting, blah, 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 blah. But even those people, a lot of them are going, these guys sit in trucks and they don't interact with people very much in the physical setting. And they have been doing the same thing for 2 years. And I want my avocados. I want my, what's Trudeau going to snack on after a long night of blackfacing if they don't bring him his avocados, And so people are just kind of going, this is really stupid. Like it's for, even for people that have been in the center of this whole thing, they see this and they go, this is clearly vindictive. This is like, we're almost in February of 2022. And now you've put down a mandate for the guys that have been doing this for 23 months. Mm-hmm. This is ridiculous. So a lot of people, the thing is, almost everybody, I believe every single person who's been vaccinated has not actually had informed consent, because you can't have information without, so it's not, you're not informed, technically speaking. Just anecdotally, if you talk to people and you go, why did you take the jab? And they'll say, I want to travel. I wanted to go to restaurants. I wanted to finish my degree. There's some people that are, really into the whole thing and watch a lot of CNN and they think, my health sort of thing, right? Most people just did it because they were told that this was what they had to do in order to live their lives. And they're not really principled people, which is fine. They're just, your average person. So it wasn't like a huge affront to their conscience to do so. They didn't like it, but they just said, whatever, I'll do it. That's the majority of people. It really is. That's the majority of people. Most people did it because they were told if 70% of the province did it, we'd open up and that sort of thing. But we haven't. Restaurants are just opening up again today, at 50% with vaccine passports. What a joke, So this trucker thing, people just, most people who are there are vaccinated. I interviewed a guy. He's a Middle Eastern guy, been in Canada for a long time. Middle Eastern trucker. He's vaccinated. He's like, bro, I'm not anti anything. I'm just anti-mandate. It's like, just don't force people to do what they don't want to do. That's what this has become.
Yeah, I've seen even the really good, to me, the really at least reasonable doctors who support vaccines. They're in favor of the data that points towards the vaccine, but they're still against the mandate because they're rational people, at least. One of the things, though, that I think one of the perhaps the Achilles heel in this, because when I think about in history, popular uprisings. So you have the civil rights movement in the United States. You have the Eastern European uprising against communism. You also have the Arab Spring that happened a few years ago. In all these cases, the media was actually for the people. And so the media was actually shining a light on the injustice, especially like in the civil rights movement in the United States. You have like these unarmed protesters getting beaten up by sheriffs. So you have a international pressure that gets then put on the government to actually side with the people, because the media shines the light on that, at least. Now, in this case, it does seem that the media is totally against the truckers, and I saw this in D.C. when I was at the March for Life. They're doing all sorts of bird dogging, saboteuring, because they're planting people in these marches or in these protests, and these people are federal agents or Antifa or whatever they are, and they're the ones waving Confederate flags and Nazi flags or whatever. So they're trying to provoke something, and they may even be violent to try to provoke violence so that it can be shut down. So what do you think about the success, the prospect of success when the media is completely against it? What are your thoughts on that?
So it's a very strange situation right now, because the conservative media in Canada, listen, the media in Canada is you almost got to understand the Canadian temperament. We're not a rebellious people. We're not a revolutionary people. There's pros and cons to the different national temperaments. Ours is generally peaceful, which is great. But then when you need to stand up for yourself, that's very hard for people to do in this sense. But finally, we're doing it. So just like everywhere, you have your basically conservative and liberal media, for ostensibly speaking. And for the last 2 years, our conservative media has been abysmal for the most part. Last 5 or 6 months, it started to sound a lot more reasonable. They've realized that Florida is not a mythological place that you have to walk through a wardrobe in some English countryside and end up in Narnia. Florida actually exists, and they live free. The state of Michigan, which has one of the craziest women who's ever lived as the governor, is living basically free. I mean, yeah, and that's like, I'm within a couple hours I could be in Detroit, sort of thing. So people are kind of going, yeah, and people are traveling and they're coming back and they're going, well, yeah, they're free over there. Like it's a real thing for people now. The hysteria for most places in the world has let off. So the conservative media finally caught up to that. So what's happening right now is the liberal media is looking dumber every day. Yesterday or the day before, there was a woman on CBC, the Communist Broadcasting Corporation, and she was saying that, she's saying we can't dispel the possibility that this is Russian. This is a Russian operation because of the Ukraine thing. And it's funny, I tweeted, it's like, who the hell's the conspiracy theorist? My goodness gracious, you could say the craziest thing, so
CBC, just so for non-Canadians, is that like one of the big mainstream?
It's the biggest media company,
and they just flooded the Russia gate.
Yeah. So
you just have to laugh at this point.
You do. The biggest media operation in Canada is PBS NPR. Put it that way. Which is the strange thing. That's where the things are flipped. So say all you want about Fox News, it's not perfect. My goodness gracious, if we could have a Tucker Carlson, it would change the history of Canada. Like it's that the media stranglehold here, the subsidizing. CTV, Canadian Television, Global, and which is like an ABC, and the CBC. CBC is the government one. CTV is private, technically speaking. Global is private, technically speaking. I think that's the main ones. I don't have it to cable anymore, so I don't know. They are all subsidized by the government, so they're private, but they receive a ton of money. They just do. They receive a ton of money. And what are you playing there? I heard that.
Yeah.
Sorry, just that's your workout playlist. But anyway, so it's insane. The National Post, which was started by Conrad Black, who's a pretty good fella. He's actually seems he's an outspoken faithful Catholic as far as it goes. Even they're subsidized. So there's just so much subsidizing. So independent media is very small here. Okay. But nonetheless, most people under the age of about 40, this is as far as I can tell, they don't even really consult legacy media. They just don't. Even if they're liberals, they still just do like liberal TikTok and liberal Instagram, because the thing is the legacy media, it's an old medium. It's your classic. You sit down and somebody is an anchor, and then they scare the tar out of you for 20 minutes, and they advertise pills on the commercials. That's what they do. It's very boring. No one under the age of 40 really wants to watch it. So the thing is it's different in the 1960s. It's different in the Arab Spring. For sure it is. But it's different in a lot of different ways. Because, there was no social media during the civil rights movement. Faults of a man like Martin Luther King aside, the media was on the side of trying to end segregation. And so therefore people saw it because there was 4 channels and everyone watched them. Whereas right now, the numbers for, I think the CBC for their major flagship, like anchor, nighttime anchor show gets like 500,000 viewers or something, right? Whereas a podcast like Joe Rogan's gets 11 million listeners a day. Tucker Carlson gets 3.5 million viewers a night, which is huge for a single anchor. Joe Rogan gets 11 million listeners a day. Joe Rogan's on the side of the truckers. Elon Musk is on the side of the truckers. Here in Canada, it's everywhere. They had to shut down the Rideau Center in Ottawa, which is the major mall. It's a beautiful mall. I used to walk through it every day when I would go to work living in Ottawa. And they shut it down on Saturday because there was too many people without masks on. No one cares. There's these things called en routes. Okay, so an en route is is on the highways. It's not a truck stop. It's like a place for people to stop. It's got like stores and whatever, and you get a coffee. And they're called an en route, and they're every 80 kilometers or so on the highway. And they've been really strict with their mask mandates. They've been notoriously strict. And my friend went up to Ottawa with his 10 kids, and on his way back, he stopped in an en route with his family. No one was wearing masks. The police were in there because the police were called, and they were telling people that they need to put masks on. People were saying no. The police started begging people, "Can you please put a mask on?" And they said no. And the police were just like, "Well, I don't know what to do now." This thing is, we live in 2 parallel worlds right now in Canada. And the interesting thing about the international press, internationally, the press is actually being relatively favorable to Canada. So it is very strange. And to be honest, I think we're going to see things get really weird and really ugly pretty soon, because I don't think that it can happen smoothly.
Yeah. So what do the oligarchs do exactly when their psycho manipulation fails? Obviously, as it's failing now because their power is based on mind control. So the mind control is failing. So what do they do now? They can either Trudeau's going off to his penthouse, who knows where. And so they can provoke violence with saboteurs, like we talked about. So then once they provoke the violence, because if you have a bunch of, I don't know, what do y'all have in Canada? You have a CIA, FBI type of people.
Yeah. So we got various
that type of thing.
Policing, okay. Various policing agencies.
So those guys show up at the trucker march. They start attacking people, and then you have to defend yourself. So you're defending yourself against these government agents. And then the media says, "Oh, it's violent." And then they send in the troops, and then they suppress everything. That would be the worst case scenario, because then people get killed. That'd be like Tiananmen Square. People are shot at. That's worst case scenario. But that would be one solution that the government would try to do. That would be if the media narrative fails, if they fail to mind control everyone. It seems like that's not really a good, they would really go for that. What else could they do, really? Go ahead.
Excuse me. I've thought about this a lot. Again, you got to go back to the sort of the national temperament. I don't know. They want to have a North Korea level control of your mind in Canada, but they don't have a North Korea level of severity. That's the difference. You and I have been talking about this for a long time. It's a soft communism, and soft communism is effective. It's a communism of hypnosis. It's a communism of sin. It's a communism of licentiousness, and it makes you submit because you don't have any backbone, because you have no convictions, because you're just you have no back. You're just squishy, But everyone's like that here. Like, I mean, Justin Trudeau is he's the platonic form of an effeminate man. Like he's an archetype of effeminacy. It's unbelievable. But he's a Marxist. He really is. and the liberals. I bet you I can't. I mean, if there's, let's say, 130, 140 liberal ministers in parliament, I bet you 127 of them are actually committed Marxists. I bet you there's a couple maybe that are kind of like your old, like Joe Manchin. He went against the party line with the whole infrastructure bill in Congress. They're sort of like I call them old school liberals, where I don't agree with your morals and stuff, but they are of an older generation where they sort of liberal to them meant everyone should just sort of be left alone. Like they almost or more of a philosophically liberal than an ideological Marxist. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 of those left, but most of them are committed Marxists through and through. They 100% are. And Trudeau was one of those. So right now, Trudeau is in hiding for no reason. There hasn't been a single thing of violence. That's the thing too, is I don't know how they would start violence at these things. Everyone's so happy. Like they're dancing. Like that's the thing, is they're literally dancing. Yesterday at 11 o'clock, I wish it was a Catholic mass, but at 11 o'clock they had a prayer service with some Protestant pastors who came out and just preached about freedom and loving your neighbor and just being a good person. I mean, it was just, it's chicken soup for the soul, but it's not violence, on Saturday night, they had a dance. So like the truckers have all, they speakers and everything. And you could just hear just like rave music or whatever, techno. Everyone was just dancing. I mean, I don't know how you make these people violent. Canadians, we are, I got the hockey jersey on here. Trivia for anyone who's, that's a European convoy starting. Yeah. But trivia for anyone who's a hockey fan. I think this is 2002. I think this is the 2002 Olympic sweater. We're not a non-violent people insofar as we don't like fighting. We love fighting. Like hockey is like we love fighting. Right. Even historically, boxing we've had a lot of boxing champions come out of Canada. George Chuvalo he fought Ali, Frazier, and Foreman, and he lost to all of them. 90 fights. Knocked out about 6-7 times, but was never off his feet. The guy literally got knocked out on his feet. He never fell.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
George Chuvalo he's amazing. A legend. And Ali said he was the toughest man he ever fought. He couldn't believe it. That's Canada. Like, we're not the best at everything, but that's historically who we've been. I mean, goodness gracious, what kind of man colonizes this place? It's like you're gonna get scurvy.
Yeah, exactly. The voyageurs. I was just reading this Michigan history. Yeah, the French.
The same idea.
French
it's crazy.
Built it from the ground up. Yeah.
Like you're gonna go to Edmonton. It's minus 45, and you're gonna try and live there. What the hell's wrong with you? The kind of person who does this. That's who we are deep down. We love to fight, but we just have fun with it. This is why we, hockey fights. Those guys drink beer with each other after. Like that's who we are. So we like to be violent in the right setting, but this idea of social violence, it's not something we do. It's just not. So I don't even, what are they going to do? Go provoke? It's, the whole time, the whole message about this whole thing is anyone who promotes violence is out, and anyone who promotes violence, you should believe they're a Fed. That's been the message. They saw January 6th. They saw these things. They said anyone who comes around, like there's been pictures going around of some guy with a Confederate flag, and that's been who's coming in here? Titus, what are you doing?
I can't sleep.
Okay, go here. I've got if you want to be a dad, I've got. So here's the here's a video from the European, because this is European Freedom Convoy. There's a U.S. branch. We'll talk about that in a second as well. If I can get this thing to load, it just froze on me again. But looking at the Telegram, there's 20,000 people in the U.S. convoy chat. There's another U.S. chat that I'm just looking into. Looks like this is going to die on me too. But let me see if I can do it one more time on a lesser scale. So this is beginning to sweep the world. And so if you'd like to get involved, here are the Telegram. I'll put this on the screen here just a minute. In fact, let me just put this tweet on I'm going to put this tweet in the show notes. So if you go right below the show, this is the tweet with all of the Telegram URLs. So there's the Europe convoy in general, the Canadian convoy, obviously. There's the Australia convoy. Shout out to the Aussies. Finland. There's the Netherlands convoy, Czech convoy, Belgian convoy, French convoy, and also these United States. So that is the interesting thing. And I think what Kennedy pointed out was very interesting in terms of the media, because we do have this, we're still on YouTube so far, but we do have means to get around it. Let me see if I can play that one more time. And then I'd like to get to some of those questions with Kennedy when he comes back. Let's see if I can make this thing work finally. I don't know if it's gonna go, but
I'm back.
Okay.
I don't know why. Did you change the settings from person?
Oh, here we go. I was trying to play this video for the. Okay, here we go. Maybe it'll work now. Oh, no, I lost my mouse again. Technical difficulties are preventing this.
That's all right.
Anyways,
so
it's sweeping the world is the point I was trying to make. The promo video for the Europeans, it's still not working. Okay, well, the promo video for the Europeans is basically Canadians showed us we're all going to do this everywhere else now.
Mm-hmm. They're already protesting it. They're already doing it in Australia.
Right. So it's the United States version is also being organized. Mm-hmm. I see two different American versions right now, at least in Telegram.
Really?
Yeah. So there's Convoy to DC is 2,000 members, but then the other one is 20,000 members. There's the World Freedom Convoy. The World Freedom Convoy has 38,000 members in Telegram.
Okay.
And then the where is that other DC one? I can't find the other. It was okay. Here it is. U.S. Convoy for Freedom to Washington D.C. 22,000 members. So yeah, there's two different Telegram chats right now organizing a U.S. version.
There's also, I should say, this has been what's incredible about this is there's borders have been shut down by American truckers parking in front of them in solidarity. So out in the West, you have these borders that are basically just open fields like Alberta and Montana. And they've been just clogged up because people can't get through because the truckers are just saying we're not leaving until you drop the mandates. And I want to address something that's been really prevalent in the last couple of years, especially amongst a lot of traditionally minded Catholics and even just, let's say, devout Christians in general who kind of take things really seriously. To be in a position where you are adhering to biblical truth in today's society, you've definitely taken a lot of red pills. I understand that. You understand the media is lying to you, you get that. But then there's a difference between the red pill and the black pill, where you just become continually pessimistic, cynical, and kind of a nut. Okay. And it's a fine line. And you almost become the flip side of a leftist, it's like when the leftists kept going on about coronavirus and like just give it 2 more weeks and whatever. It was like you sound like a nut. You're in this fantasy land where you just can't accept reality. The same can happen kind of on the other side. I'm not saying to be a centrist. I'm not talking about like a Hegelian dialectic. I'm just saying you can go too deep down the rabbit hole and you lose it, and you also become unhelpful. And I understand parliamentary democracy is not perfect. I understand congressional Republican representation is not perfect. I understand you guys know my political leanings. I don't like any of them really. But they're the systems that we have, so what other solution what do you suggest? I'll say to people, X, Y, and Z is happening in Parliament. Like, who cares? Liberal, conservative, it's all ruse. It's all Great Reset. It's all Bill Gates. It's all whatever. Maybe I'm sure that there's always conspiracies. There's never been a time somebody is probably conspiring against Tim Flanders right now. Somebody doesn't like Tim Flanders. You know, that's
That's
true.
flattering.
Somebody
Thank
who
you.
doesn't like Tim Flanders, it could just be a neighbor who doesn't like the way you put your trash can on the curb, and he wants to call the thing to get you reported. Like, who knows? There's always somebody trying to get you. That's
Yeah, here's
life.
our confrere Jake
Yes.
Fowler says the mindset of the too far right is similar to the too far left. I've been
Yeah.
thinking about this lately. It's kind of like there's very much a breakdown of just like kind of rationality and
It's rational. That's right.
intellectual virtue, in the sense that we need to evaluate the evidence as much as we can, but also the fact that, like on coronavirus, it's just an absolute fact that we should all agree on that whatever data is out there, it's insufficient to draw a very certain conclusion, because scientific data takes decades to evaluate and understand with certainty. So it's absolutely impossible to have certainty on even the coronavirus at all. I mean, this is just an example of being prudent. Like, we just can't know all the info. We're making our best guess based on the info we have. That's just the way that science works.
Yeah. And then, so right now, people will say, what do you hope it's going to happen? And I have 3 basic predictions. Scenarios. One scenario is that Trudeau surprises us all and just drops everything. Now, the thing is, most of the mandates across the country are actually provincial, so the provinces have to do it. Like Trudeau, I hate to give the man credit at all. I think he can walk and chew gum. I'll give him that. He's actually not done much. He hasn't implemented many measures. It's been mainly the provinces. So that's why these federal things have been unique and they've united peoples, because they're the few things that Trudeau's government has actually said, like, this is our regulation now to do with coronavirus, versus it was just, he declared a state of emergency for the country. He gave out welfare checks. We have this thing called the Canadian Emergency Relief Benefit. It's from like 1918. It was supposed to be for war and floods, and they ended up using it as a national emergency, right? So they gave everybody $2,000 a month to stay home if you wanted it, if you quit your job because you were scared or whatever. So he's done that, but actual provinces have done 90% of the legwork. So even if Trudeau tomorrow drops everything, provinces still have to drop their stuff, which I'm certain they would. Province of Saskatchewan came out and said, yeah, we're done. We're going to end all this very soon. This is obviously nonsense, which, that's just the first domino to fall. The second scenario I see is that the feds don't drop anything, but the provinces catch wind. This is the most likely scenario. Scenario 2 and 3, I think, are most likely. Scenario 2 is where the provinces drop everything, and then there's just sort of this ignoring of everything the federal government is doing. I think that's possible. Right now, about half of the provinces are actually run by ostensible conservatives. And before 2020, they actually hated Trudeau because that was what you're supposed to do as a conservative. As soon as the greatest disaster in human history started, they all had a singular focus, and they were all, well, we have to unify around beating the virus, that sort of thing. So they all became leftists, and they just they all sounded the same. They are kind of coming out of that stupor, and it seems like they're starting to hate Trudeau again, which is fine. And so they're starting to drop their mandates. The third scenario is, I think it's going to get really ugly. Marxists would rather commit suicide than ever admit they're wrong. That's the thing about Marxism. Look at every single Marxist dictator in history. You know who's great on this is Jesse Kelly. He's a political commentator. He's read every bloody book I think he could find on communism. And, he said tyrants right now should be very afraid around the world because look what's happened to all the tyrants when people get tired of them in human history. They all lose their heads, literally, or they are hanged or something. I'm not advocating for that at all. I'm just saying I don't see another way through, ultimately. People say Justin Trudeau is a puppet. If he is a puppet, I think, and of course he is to a degree. Everyone's owned by somebody in some sense, I guess. If that's the case, then the likely scenario there would be they'll just say, Justin, you're losing the people. I think that what they're going to do is they're going to destroy his life. You can't, he's never going to come out and say, I'm sorry. Not sorry, because we're Canadian, he'll say sorry. He's not going to come out and say mea culpa. It's not going to happen. It's just not. If it does, it's an act of divine miracle, and that's wonderful. And the Immaculate Heart's triumph's probably around the corner because that's more likely, So to be honest, if things do drop, it'll be like the way that they destroyed Cuomo. You know, it's like this is what they do to people when they lose favor. They just destroy them, right?
Mhm.
The
Throw
guy
them under the
obviously
bus. Yeah.
they throw, yeah, but they'll destroy him. Like he'll be in exile or something like that. You know, he already kind of is. He left. He just went to the cottage, and he's now, you know, there's rumors that he's in Israel now or whatever. Who knows? Um, so personally, I think though, the back to this idea of stop being so negative. This is the system we have. The positive out of this whole thing, we have a parliamentary system. A parliamentary system is supposed to work with the various people in government. We have a multi-party system. It's not dual party. And it's supposed to be very hard to pass laws because there's supposed to be resistance. And historically, that's how Canada has operated. It really has. It's very hard to pass laws, which is good. It's supposed to be a common law tradition where you have centuries of British history, which is basically Christendom. And then you have sort of a residual way of operating. And if you're going to change any law for any reason, it has to be really hard to do so. And it's always been really hard to do so. And that's fine. You can ask for a different system. This is the one we have. So when you look at videos, I used to show my students videos of Parliament, and it was awesome. Like, think how boring that sounds. If you actually look up Canadian Parliament, it looks like a party where they're about to get in a fight and they're having fun with it. Like they're chirping each other and hissing and booing, and people are making jokes, and it's rhetoric back and forth. And sometimes it's literally been, you want to take this outside, and then they threaten a fist fight. That actually happens. It's awesome. It's their, if it's that important, that's what you should be doing. If you believe that so-and-so's policy is actually going to make your mother poor and lose her pension, you should be fighting against that. But they've stopped doing that. For the last 2 years, they haven't done that. They've all been, the only thing that has mattered has been the virus. And there's been a couple little pet issues that various conservatives, like internet censorship, will fight that a little bit. But the parliament itself has been restricted. So it's like only 20% of members can be there at a time. All of these things have been, it's been a complete and utter disaster.
Now, in the United States, we also had some amount of subsidiarity, like you're saying, English common law, meaning that basically the local rule wins. The local rule is the established customs of the local village, community, city is what wins and what rules the people. And what's most important, that's subsidiarity. That's just Catholic social teaching. We can all get behind that. That's very important. But gradually in these United States, the federal government has basically taken over, destroyed the United States, and created the American empire. Mm-hmm. Is that similar what has happened in Canada history, and is it possible to get back to any sort of provincial rule as a subsidiarity?
I mean, yes and no, both, I guess. I mean, there's not a lot that the federal government does to your way of life as the average person in a province. Like, the federal government does not handle the provincial healthcare. The federal government does not handle your education. We don't actually have, I mean, we have like education ministers and stuff, but there's no Department of Education in the federal government. In a way, Canada's in a sense more federalist than the modern United States, in some senses. But that's been, again, this is one of the positives coming out of right now. The two biggest heroes politically right now in Canada are a man named Randy Hillier, and Maxime Bernier. Randy Hillier is a member of provincial parliament for a town in Eastern Ontario, and I've spoken to him. And Maxime Bernier is a former member of the Conservative Party. He was a member of parliament, and then he started his own party called the People's Party. They're both libertarians. It's a shout out there. Old school guy, but old school. Like, they really are. They're principled, and like, they're willing to die. Like, they've said this a million times. They're like, I'll go to jail. I don't care. I'll go to jail if I have to. So they have been holding rallies and stuff for the last 2 years, and those men are really, in my opinion, even though it's all about the truckers, like, these men have been going around the country, and even if there's only 40 people that showed up, or 100 people, and some places 1,000 people, some places 2,000 people. I've been to some of these rallies, and some of them are big, some of them tiny. They've been doing this before it was cool for the last 2 years. And I've spoken to Randy Hillier, not Bernier, but I've spoken to Hillier actually quite a bit. And he just said to me, he's like, Kennedy, I've been in the parliament for like 15 years. The parliament is run by public opinion. There are no principles amongst most of the people there. You work for 6 years in the provincial parliament, you get a pension for life that's not taxed. It's $100,000. What's your principles worth? Wow. Right? Because 4 years is one term. You got to get reelected. So that's the thing. So it's bought and paid for in a lot of ways, at least in the mentality of it. So he's been fighting that. So he told me, he said, public opinion will change because once they start realizing that they're not going to get elected if they don't do the right thing, then they do something different. So again, take it for what it is. Those men are idiots and squishy. Fine, then go change public opinion. And that's what they're doing. And this is what we've seen with this trucker thing is, for whatever reason, the powder keg is exploding and public opinion is changing. There was just a donation to the truckers. People think it was Elon Musk, $42,000. And the donation name was liar.com. And the person who bought the domain, which probably cost a lot of money, it goes to Justin Trudeau's Wikipedia page. So, so this thing is got a life of its own, and the public opinion has changed.
So, yes, and that bringing up exactly what you said. When is the next election? How soon is that going to happen for MPs or?
So the provincial elections, there's a bunch of them happening soon. So in my province, which is the biggest province in Canada, it's happening in June. We have a quote unquote conservative leader. Give me a break. He's been a full on Marxist the whole time. He's Rob Ford's brother. Remember Rob Ford, the mayor of Toronto, smoking crack, and yeah. And I think Alberta's having one soon. A few of them are quite soon. But the thing is, the federal parliament has a minority government. It's a little civics here. If you have a minority government, the opposing parties can approach the Speaker of the House, who actually sits in the stead of the Queen on a throne, and you can ask for a vote of non-confidence and dissolve the parliament. So you've lost you've lost the support of the opposition. Every time someone's sworn in with a minority government, the opposing parties, out of custom, actually have to agree to swear you in. If you have a majority government, which is you get a certain amount of seats, it's not 50%. It's actually more than that. If you do that, then you have 4 years guaranteed. Except they could appeal to England or something like that. I don't know. Turns out you're like a warlord, human trafficking person or something. In theory, they could say this guy's illegitimate. So Justin Trudeau called an election last September because he had a minority government. And you only call an election when you have minority government early. You only call it early because you think you're going to get a majority, because you want to solidify power.
Yeah.
He didn't get it. He actually lost 2 seats. It was disheartening that he won again, but it was just the status quo, which in a sense means, okay, people don't like him more, which was fine. The Conservatives actually had more votes than them. They just didn't have more seats. So it was known, it's an open secret that Justin Trudeau was going to call another election. At that time, he was going to call another election in 18 months. So it would be in the middle of 2023, early 2023. Okay, here's the thing though. This is why he's doing these maneuvers. He's doing these maneuvers because he's a Marxist and he wants to consolidate power. The problem is that the maneuvers to consolidate power are not working anymore. So I don't think he's going to call an election because he knows he would lose. But I believe that this is back to the whole idea. The parliamentarians have not been working for 2 years. I know men who own trucking companies. One of them actually got to go meet with all the ministers of the Conservative Party as part of this truck. They actually brought them up and put them in hotels and stuff. And they said, and by the way, the hotels, there was no one wearing masks. That was the people that are at the protest. They have every single room in the hotel and they're just having parties. So they are finally meeting with them, and the people. This thing is so big now that these people are going, listen, Conservatives, like, you're done. You have to do something or you're done. And they're kind of going, oh crap, we're done if we don't do something. So all of a sudden they're like, we support the truckers, we support rights, all this sort of stuff. So now they're finally motivated to go back to work and actually fight for something because it's politically viable. The man who runs a Conservative Party is a feckless coward. He's one of the worst politicians in history. Aaron O'Toole, he's pro-choice. He's pro-redefinition of marriage. He's literally the worst. And everyone knows he's the worst now. They're having a leadership review. So the other day, this was leaked from Parliament. Some journalists found this out. Basically, Aaron O'Toole is such a leftist. He's the leader. He's such a leftist that he didn't want to support the truckers because, vaccinations, blah, blah, blah. And one of his members of Parliament, who's more popular than him, talked to the media on the way into Parliament before the meetings were supposed to start. They were going to have a meeting about it. He got caught by the media on the way in. And he said, yeah, I support him, blah, 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 blah. And he's the most popular MP in the country for the Conservatives. The leader was fuming mad, and he basically wanted to discipline this fella, but the caucus, the conservative group, just said, no, we're not with you, leader. So then about 3 hours later, somehow he comes up with this perfectly highly produced video saying how much he supports the truckers. They forced his hand, right? And again, again, complain about the system, but this is what you're doing. So this is what's happening.
Force his hand. Yeah. Lastly, in closing, we've got 3 minutes left. I wanted to say the difference between an uprising and a revolution, because this recalls the Irish uprising of 1641. It recalls the Polish uprisings of the 19th century. An uprising, and also the American Revolution, is a mixture of revolution and uprising. It's a mixed bag. An uprising is a revolt against tyranny to reestablish the customs and the rights of the people, to restore the rights of the people, to restore something that had been taken away by tyranny. So obviously the Irish example is the easiest one to fathom. The Poles as well. But this is an uprising, not a revolution. The revolution is the Marxists. They want to change everything, take away your rights, take away your way of life, take away your family. They want to give you sex education to your children and enforce all manner of wickedness on you and your kids. And an uprising is restoring the rights of the people. So if you can, according to your state in life, according to your location, it behooves all men of God to become involved in some way. If you can't go to the uprising physically, at least share it on your social media. Do what you can. Share this. Be involved. This uprising, this is like good ecumenism, like you're talking about. This is like, hey, I'll join hands with Protestants, and even if you're an atheist, let's all fight against this Marxist tyranny that's sweeping the world. We have to fight against it.
Some of the greatest heroes have been the Sikhs. So, like in all countries, certain ethnicities could gravitate to different industries, right? And something like 40% of truckers in the Greater Toronto area, which is huge, are actually Sikhs. It's like a Punjabi community thing.
Okay.
So Trudeau came out and he said there's videos of him saying these people who don't want mandates, they're racists and they're a fringe minority. And there's guys with turbans on and their long beards, and they brought their whole families up. So there's actually, man, you got to find it. Look it up later, people. But there was this poor university student. Oh my goodness, they've been abused by their professors to believe their stupid things. And it's a kid there with a big placard, and it says like, "I don't support white supremacy" or something like that, And the kid's wearing a mask, and just like this poor. I mean, seriously, the parents. The shame on the parents who raised these kids.
Right.
And Rebel News walks up to him. Rebel News is like our independent media. They're the best. Life site, we're obviously more certain way, but Rebel News is just sort of a non-denominational independent media. And they walk up to him, and then they actually placed like a 50-year-old Sikh man, big beard and a turban on beside him, and he's a trucker. And they're like, "Are you a white supremacist?" And he's just like, "I am not." Like, I'm here. And there's like groups like Sikhs for Freedom, and they're bringing food and feeding everybody. You got the Mennonites meeting the truckers. You got the Sikhs. You got the Muslim truck drivers. You got the Ezra Levant. He gave a really good speech. He's the Jewish, conservative Jewish guy who's the head of Rebel Media. Everybody who wants to be sane and live like a sane person and believes for all intents and purposes in something like classic liberalism, just this idea that can we just all try to get along? That's better than what we have going on right now. They're all there. And it's what we have. So support something good. And to my traditional Catholic friends, stop being so bloody negative. You're not helping anybody. Like, last thing I'll say here, when all these rallies started, my wife and I were sharing some stuff, and some traditional Catholic, person that we're associated with was saying, this person you shared, they're a Zionist, whatever. And meanwhile, this person like lost their job in Parliament because they're standing up for the freedom of people to not get jabbed and all this kind of stuff. And the only solution will come through the reign of Christ the King. And it's like, well, obviously, but like, when somebody breaks into your house, you say, well, the only solution to this is the reign of Christ the King. It's like, no, you take care of your family. We're being violated. So if somebody is deciding they're going to help you not be violated, you just help each other. That's all you can do. And then from there, hopefully you evangelize each other. And then, you can, like I said in my article for 1 Peter 5, you can put on sackcloth and ashes and fight the tyrants at the same time. You don't have to do one or the other. And right now, the season is to fight the tyrants. Hopefully things calm down after that, and we can have quote unquote freedom of speech, etc. again. So we can at least talk about Christianity in public and not be called terrorists. That's what we're hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, it's just goes back to that intellectual virtue. It's basically the difference between living in reality. Here I am in reality versus I'm in some abstract Platonic form world where the reign of Christ the King and integralism is perfect or whatever. And we all want that, but you have to live in reality, and that's just a function of intellectual virtue. Very important. So let's offer up the holy face prayers for the sake of the Canadian uprising, the uprising in all nations. Men of God, it's your time. It's your time. What are your children going to ask you when this moment in history? Your children, your grandchildren are going to ask you, what did you do in 2022? Did you support this uprising against this insane Marxist globalist tyranny? What did you do? So, men of God, it's time. Let's pray. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Let God arise. Let his enemies be scattered. Let them that hate him flee from before his face. Pater noster qui es in caelis, sanctificetur nomen tuum, adveniat regnum tuum, fiat voluntas tua, sicut in cielo et in terra.
Panem nostrum quotidianum da nobis hodie, et dimitti nobis debita nostra, sicut et nos dimittimus debitoribus nostris, et ne nos inducas in tentationem, sed libera nos a malo. Amen.
In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Jesus is King.